Good morning. It is 9:30 a.m. on the East Coast, and we're coming on the air with news of an overnight investigation at Mar-a-Lago, President Trump's Florida home. The Secret Service saying a man in his early 20s was shot by Secret Service agents and a deputy from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office after a, quote, unauthorized entry into the secure perimeter at Mar-a-Lago. The president was not there at the time. He's been at the White House all weekend. The FBI, Secret Service, and Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office are currently holding a press briefing on the incident. Let's listen in.
All right. My name's Rick Bradshaw. I'm the sheriff of Palm Beach County. I have with me from the FBI, Special Agent in Charge Brett Skiles, Special Agent in Charge Rafael Barrios from the Secret Service. Also, I have Resident Agent in Charge David Clancy. At 1:30 this morning, the security detail detected that a individual had made his way into the inner perimeter of Mar-a-Lago. A deputy and two Secret Service agents on the detail went to that area to investigate. They confronted a white male that was carrying a gas can and a shotgun. He was ordered to drop those two pieces of equipment that he had with him, at which time he put down the gas can, raised the shotgun to a shooting position. At that point in time, the deputy and the two Secret Service agents fired their weapons and neutralized the threat. He is deceased at the scene. I'll give you a picture of the shotgun and the gas can to have with you. So that's what we know now. Investigation continues. The FBI is the lead investigation agency on this case, and we will be assisting them in whatever manner they would like. And they will be responsible for answering any other questions at an appropriate time. Agent Skiles, thank you, sir.
Good morning. Again, my name is Brett Skiles. I'm the Special Agent in Charge for the FBI's Miami Field Office. First of all, I'd like to thank the Secret Service and Palm Beach Sheriff's Office for their quick response in this matter and close collaboration. Since this area of the shooting was under Secret Service protection at the time, the FBI is assisting the investigation. Currently, our evidence response team is processing the scene, collecting evidence, and we'll continue to work the scene for as long as it takes. One thing I would ask the public is if you live in the area of the shooting, please check your exterior cameras for last night, early this morning. If you see anything that looks suspicious or out of place, please contact us at 1-800-CALL-FBI or contact the West Palm Beach Sheriff's Office. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Rafael Barrios. I'm the Special Agent in Charge of Secret Service Miami Field Office. Earlier today, two special agents from the Secret Service and a deputy from the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office were involved in an officer-involved shooting while responding to an armed individual at one of the gates at Mar-a-Lago. Preliminary information indicates that the individual was armed with a shotgun and a possession of a gasoline canister. Agents and the deputy discharged their firearms to stop the threat. At this time, no law enforcement personnel were injured during the incident. We want to be clear, the President of the United States was not in the state of Florida. And this remains an active investigation by the FBI. Thank you.
Okay. This is the picture that I'm going to give you of the shotgun and the gas can, so you got it with us. All right? So you'll have that. Like I said, there's a lot more investigation to be done. FBI is the lead agency. We'll be assisting them. And fortunately, nobody was in jeopardy inside because of the quick action that was taken by the deputies and the Secret Service. All right. Do we have any relative questions?
Can you
all right.
hold up that photo again? Of the gun?
Yeah, we're going to give it to you. All right. Okay. That's it for today. Say that again, ma'am. There's two agencies involved. Sheriff's Office, Secret Service.
But the actual officer, the agency.
Well, that's under investigation right now. Okay?
Was this person known to law enforcement prior to the incident?
Not right now.
Can you clarify where on the perimeter it happened? You mentioned
At
by
the gate.
Yeah.
At the front gate over there?
Yep.
Okay.
They're the north side.
North side.
Were they inside of the gate or no?
He was just inside the inner perimeter, yes. All right?
Was anyone involved wearing body cameras?
Pardon me?
Was anyone wearing body cameras?
Yes, we always do.
Were any words exchanged between the officers and someone?
Only words that we said to him was drop the items, which means the gas can and the shotgun.
But the suspect never spoke.
He put the gas can down and pointed the shotgun at the officers.
Was the shotgun loaded? The shotgun loaded?
I don't know.
How many shots were fired?
Don't know that either yet. It's part of the investigation. Okay, folks, thanks for being here. That's it.
Thank you.
All right, you have been hearing from Palm Beach County Sheriff Rick Bradshaw, as well as the Secret Service and FBI, who are all part of this overnight investigation, and this investigation that they say will continue. Again, them announcing that a man in his 20s, a white male, approached Mar-a-Lago, was able to reach the inner perimeter at one of the gates with a gas can and a shotgun. Authorities told him to drop the items. He set the gas can down, and according to the sheriff there, he pointed his shotgun at authorities, at which point they fired. They say the investigation is ongoing, and they are asking the nearby public for any footage they might have from their homes that might be relevant to this investigation, or if anything looks suspicious, to turn that footage in. Let's bring in Evie Pampora. She's an NBC News law enforcement analyst. Hi, Evie. You were listening in there. What did you take away from this press conference?
So we understand that the president was not on Mar-a-Lago, which is the first key. The most important information, was he on site? What the public should know is certain sites, like a residence, is always secured around the clock. So it's going to be a 24/7 type of security perimeter, because it's a place that the president or protectee consistently goes. That area is going to be staffed by U.S. Secret Service personnel. It's also going to be staffed by local police who help support the U.S. Secret Service in that area. So in hearing the briefing, what we're hearing is through the North Gate, we had it sounds like two special agents in that area with a local law enforcement from Palm Beach County, a deputy sheriff's office. And we have an individual who enters the perimeter, the gates. We're looking at this happening at 1:30 a.m. So that's kind of going to be a little bit of the first red flag. It's the middle of the night, 1:30 a.m. The individual is coming to the gate, breaches, gets into the inner perimeter, according to what we just heard at the briefing. And at that point, they visually see him holding a fuel can and also a shotgun. They give him a command, which is part of the use of force continuum. The first thing is, drop your weapon or put that down. And according to the press briefing, actually wrote down exactly what they said. Drop the items. He places the canister down, but then raises his weapon towards law enforcement. At that point, despite the fact that the president is not there, now it becomes a threat to those individuals, right? Is there a concern for my own, life, safety, threat of my own life, or bodily harm? At that point, as he raises that weapon towards the law enforcement, then you can engage. It's basically the same protocol any law enforcement agency has. He raises the weapon, they raise their weapons, it sounds like, and they engage the individual. We don't know how many shots were fired. It's still preliminary. So that's one thing. We don't know how many shots Secret Service fired or the local police department fired. Now, to those individuals who might be wondering why FBI is involved, the way the system is designed is that FBI will lead the investigation. And this is designed to protect kind of the sanctity and the quality of the investigation. Secret Service will help support and hand over information, whatever they have, but FBI leads that. It's to make sure that everything is clear, it's quality controlled, because the Secret Service is the one who engaged the individual. You bring in another agency it's neutral to do a proper investigation, so nothing's tainted. Nobody can say, hey, the Secret Service is trying to cover something up or anything like that. And that's why FBI comes in from their own neutral place. They'll do the investigation. What's interesting here is something we're seeing quite commonly now being used is asking the public to help with their security cameras. This is a new thing we've been seeing with a lot of cases happening. Of and it can also be, you don't have to see anything really relevant, but of that area, any car movements, people moving in around that time zone, to hand those over, because they're going to be looking at how did this person get there? Was there a vehicle? Of course, right now we just know of one person You do want to make sure, though, that were there other people involved? Was there anybody else that could potentially have helped this person do this? Again, these are all the things you want to look at. Investigative wise, they're also going to look at not just the crime scene and putting all those pieces together, but the individual themselves. According to the briefing we just heard, they know of no known record as of yet. It's not to say that there isn't going to be something there, but they're going to do a background check, right? You're going to look for criminal history of the person. Does this person have any criminal history whatsoever? Then you're going to look into the person. So now you're going to look at going to their residence, seeing where they live, doing a search warrant at that residence, seeing if there are any other weapons there, any letters, any notes, any IEDs. We want to make sure that there's nothing else perhaps that they were doing. And actually, when they go to that residence, they will probably be extremely careful, because you always think of kind of booby traps or any type of devices, anything detonating to detonate. You're going to look at their vehicle as well, or vehicles, and check those to see if there's anything in those vehicles. Again, not just weapons, but also any clues, any letters, any writings. Then you're going to look for devices, computers, cell phones, anything where you can see any communication. Did this person have any communication with anyone else, which is going to help verify whether or not they acted alone. In addition to that, search history. Did this person do any type of search history prior to this? Any research, any reconnaissance, any research on how to carry out an attack, whatever that can help you maybe perhaps show some type of planning, preparation, or intent. In addition to the weapon, right? Let's talk about the weapon. From what we know, it's a shotgun. We don't know yet exactly what type of shotgun. I know they showed a picture of the shotgun to show to press there. But they're going to look at that shotgun. How is it purchased? Legally, illegally? Any other weapons purchased? How long do they have that weapon for? In that. So that's really where it's going to begin. And again, just, also in the planning and preparation, did this person go to the site in advance? Did they do any kind of reconnaissance on their own? Again, this is a highly visible location. There's a lot of photos and different things. So sometimes you can do reconnaissance without physically going to a site, especially if it's high profile. But I would think it's very likely that this person did visit the place or the area. The other thing is, speaking of visiting, is this person a local person? Or did this person travel from out of state, from somewhere else? We have seen that, and we would see that quite consistently in the U.S. Secret Service, that certain individuals that had, let's say, unhealthy or special interests in people we protected, quite often they would also come from different parts of the country. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is local. And with that, the U.S. Secret Service is also going to look at whether or not that person was of history with them. So there's a protective intelligence.
Really quickly,
branch.
Evie, I want you to continue,
Yes.
but I just want to note for our viewers that we do have that picture up on the screen now, the picture that the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office shared with us that shows the shotgun and the gas can from the incident. So that's what viewers are looking at now on their screen. Please continue.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. And the other important thing is, during the press conference, they asked whether or not it was loaded. And it even if the weapon was unloaded, and the public should know this, it's what the law enforcement entity perceives now. Because if you're raising your shotgun and pointing it at me in real time, I don't know if it is or isn't loaded. There's no way for me to know. So I guess in some ways you could say that not that it is completely irrelevant, but the way that it's looked at is, what do I perceive in real time in that moment? And so I won't know until after the fact, right? Once I engage a threat, whether or not it is or isn't loaded. So in court, or when it comes to your ability to use force, whether or not it is loaded, it's not going to, as long as you can point to the fact that, hey, this person raised this shotgun, they pointed it at me, I thought they were going to shoot at me, there was imminent threat of my life or bodily injury to myself or to somebody else, maybe somebody standing next to me that I'm with, then at that point, according to use of force, you are allowed to engage. So I think that that's really important, because I do know that that question was asked. But going back to the individual and this investigative process, in the U.S. Secret Service, they have something that's called protective intelligence. And basically, they keep track of individuals. There's some people that can come onto the U.S. Secret Service radar when they show interest in U.S. Secret Service protectees. And when I say interest, we're talking about typically an unhealthy interest or an interest of concern if they're repeatedly contacting. Right, and inquiring about a person or showing up to events. We would call it multiple sightings over distance and time. So let's say the president is in one city, gives a speech, then goes to another city and gives a speech, and then another. There are times where you would see the same individuals kind of leapfrog or go to these different places. And again, that would be just something that they would pay attention to. Okay, we have a person who clearly is following our protectee. So they're going to look at, did this person ever make contact with the Secret Service, make any threats towards the protectee, write anything, post anything, tweet anything. You're also going to go back and interview and talk to family, friends, places of work, to see if this person communicated any information. We often see with certain incidents, not just towards a protectee like this, but even in shootings in general, it tends to be where the individual who engages in something like this has communicated to some degree to somebody within their circle, either that they're thinking about doing something, or perhaps that they're not happy with a certain individual, that they're disgruntled, or another thing too that can sometimes happen is sometimes we always get focused on the person that they're targeting. However, it can also be something that's going on in that person's life. Let's call the individual the shooter's life, something disruptive in their life. And that does also occur where we see people kind of act out. They don't know how to handle, and they'll be triggered, let's say, by something, and then decide to carry out an attack in some way on someone with notoriety, but it also stems from some personal issues that they're dealing with. Divorce, breakup, loss of a job.
And law enforcement has said that they are not releasing the identity of this individual yet. It's worth noting, Evie, because, of course, they have to notify next of kin first. So we will be waiting for updates on that as well. And throughout this investigation, we will continue right here on NBC. We'll continue to update you and come back to Evie for more information as more details come out. Evie Pompouris, we appreciate your insight. Thank you so much. Really quickly, before we go, we want to turn to NBC's Julie Sirkin in D.C. Julie, have we heard from President Trump at all in terms of reaction from the White House this morning?
Corey, we haven't heard from the president, and I'm told that the White House is not going to provide any further details at this time. This was, of course, during the press conference. I think they're really waiting for the Secret Service and the FBI, who you heard there, those officers say is leading this investigation, to provide more information and more details. But I think really critically, in addition to what you talked to Evie about, we do know that the president was not in Mar-a-Lago this weekend. It's his winter home. It's where he spends most of his weekends in the winter months. But this weekend, he's actually in Washington, D.C. He was at the White House. He was hosting governors for a reception last night. But we also note that the president is worried to some extent about his personal safety. He made those comments to our own Tom Llamas in an interview a couple of weeks ago. Tom had asked him if he's concerned about his safety, because this incident that we saw overnight is far from the first security threat or incident to the president's life or potential threat that he has faced. He has faced 2 assassination attempts back in 2024 that were just a couple of months apart. I should note the second assassination attempt actually happened in his Florida golf course, which is not far from Mar-a-Lago, where this security incident happened overnight. The president told Tom a couple of weeks ago that he worries about his personal safety. He said that the presidency is one of the most dangerous jobs, but that he does not dwell on his own safety, saying there's more that, of course, he needs to do day to day in his job. There's also been a series of security incidents and attempts and threats at the president, in addition to those 2 assassination attempts. The most recent incident that happened around the Mar-a-Lago property was actually back in October of last year. There was a hunting stand that was noticed at Palm Beach Airport, where the president typically lands when he travels to Mar-a-Lago. Ultimately, though, no charges, no arrests were made, and it was determined that that was actually an iguana hunting stand. But it just shows you how seriously Secret Service takes these threats, takes these incidents, and also important to note that, of course, the president has been a major target of these threats, but we've seen violence happening across political parties. Just this week on Capitol Hill, members of Congress weren't in the building either, but there was an armed man who approached the Capitol, who was approached by Capitol Police. He ultimately did comply and drop his weapon, and they took him into custody, and he was an 18-year-old out of Georgia. So again, another young man in that situation. Of course, we know that it was a white man that the sheriffs are talking about today in this case, but certainly a situation that is worth monitoring, especially at this heightened time of tension, of political violence, of increased threats. Secret Service, Capitol Police, all of these agencies in charge of protecting political officials, elected officials in this country, on extremely high alert as we wait to see, of course, more details about what unfolded overnight here.
Yeah, we certainly will. Julie Sorkin, we appreciate that update. That adds some interesting context to this entire investigation. And of course, like we said before, we will continue to update you online and on air right here on NBC News. But for now, that concludes this NBC News special report. Like I said, we'll have more throughout the day on NBCnews.com. I'm Corey Coffin. Thank you for watching.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.